I'm Shirley Evans, and I'm Interim Director of the Association of Dementia Studies. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Deborah Gerard from Dementia Matters in Powys today to talk about the evolution of meeting centres in Powys. So it's absolutely great that you're here. She'll be sharing some slides in a moment. In terms of the meeting centres, we first got involved with Powys and Dementia Matters back in 2015, when we had the information meeting in Leominster, which Dawn led there at Grange Court, and Rhiannon and some of the other trustees came along to find out all about meeting centres. And that was really great, because in Leominster, well, I'm trustee of Leominster Meeting Centre there, and we wanted to start up Dementia Friendly Leominster, and Dementia Matters in Powys had a lot of know-how about dementia friendly communities, so they came over and sort of helped us with setting up, and we went across to run a workshop at Brecon Theatre on meeting centres. And no, it started off quite small as a cafe there, but grew to half a day in Brecon, and well, look at them now. You'll hear all about this from Deborah. So there'll be time for questions afterwards. So without any further ado, Deborah, would you like to take it away?
Thank you very much, Shirley, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our story about what's happening here in Mid Wales. As Shirley said, we started with a small group, a tea and chat group, back in 2016, and were very much supported by the Leominster Meeting Centre and then the concept of the meeting centres. So we officially launched our first meeting centre in 2017. So I'll go into my presentation, so sit back and make yourselves comfortable. As Shirley said, there'll be opportunities for questions as well. I can't see any of you whilst I'm giving the presentation, but if anything jumps out, please shout.
And any questions in the chat pane as well, we can pick up afterwards. Thank
you, Shirley. Give me a second. You can't set this little bit up just before you go to share, so I'm afraid you have to go through this with me. So here we are. Are you all okay? Wonderful. Let me just move that out of the way. So Dementia Matters in Powys. Shirley's invited us here today to the webinar to talk about the evolution of meeting centres in Wales. And we are here, one of the 4 nations of the UK. And Powys is the most rural and sparsely populated county in England and Wales. We cover a total of 2,000 square miles and have a population of approximately 138,000. So we're quite well spread. And we have a lot of rural areas, some amazing views. We have a lot of isolated pockets. So a lot of people living incredibly isolated in rural areas. And as you can see, the winters become quite harsh. We have bustling towns. We have some major market towns across Powys. There, the last photo you see there is Newtown, which is one of the most northerly towns. And it's a bustling town, one of the 5 major towns. A lot of tourist attractions. That photo there is in Llandrindod Wales, in the centre of Powys. As you can see, we have a lot of rural market towns as well, and villages and hamlets. And these people who live amongst the villages and in the hills do come into our towns, to our meeting centres. So in March 2017, we had the first official opening of the meeting centre in Brecon, and that's the first meeting centre in Wales, as Shirley explained, with the support of Leominster Meeting Centre and the University of Worcester. We were able to open there. So we secured a small grant from the Integrated Care Fund through the Rural Partnership Board to enable us to Trial Brecon, and that lasted for 5 quarters. And then we secured a major 3-year grant through the National Lottery Community Fund. And part of the targets for that grant were for us to open 4 meeting centres across Powys across the 3-year period. So then in April 2018, we opened the 2nd and 3rd meeting centres in Ystrad, which is our most southerly meeting centre. It's very close to the border, 15 miles from Swansea. And then central to Powys, which is the administrative hub of local authority in Llandryd North Wales. So then that next development was in October 2019, when we then opened the 4th meeting centre in Newtown. As you can see, we're spreading ourselves north in the county. That meeting centre was very much supported by the local dementia-friendly group, Dementia Friendly Newtown. They approached us asking if we could open another meeting centre in Newtown, as they could see the demand. And they also support us financially by covering the cost of the venue hire and any transport costs that people may incur. In 2019, we were asked by the University of Worcester, the Meeting Centre UK programme, if we would become an official demonstrator site, meaning that we'd share our experiences and lend support to other groups who were hoping to open meeting centres, to host visits and share experiences, etc. So in March 2019, as we were getting settled into our 4th meeting centre, like many other groups, we were struck with COVID and we were forced to close the doors of our meeting centres. And we made that decision on March the 16th. We didn't want to leave people. We couldn't just say, we'll see you on the other side. We wanted to continue our support. And more importantly, we wanted to make sure that the ethos of the meeting centres was continued throughout the pandemic, not knowing whether we were going to be closed for a month, 6 months. At that point, we had to plan other support services. So amongst the telephone support, written communication support, we wanted to combine what we did within the meeting centres. So we came about the idea. I'm very sorry, I've come off my presentation. Sorry, can you excuse me a second? There we are. I'm back. So after...
No, we can't see it.
I'm so sorry. One second. We back okay now?
We're back. Great.
Sorry about
Well
that blip. So COVID-19, as I was saying, sent us in a totally different direction, but we wanted to maintain that overall ethos of meeting centres. So with our virtual meeting centres, we had the same kind of approach by having a theme. We started off with Nature Watch, which encouraged people at that point to get out into their gardens, have a look at their scenery, their landscapes, to share photographs of things that they were seeing. And that is still ongoing now. The different themes within the meeting centres kept people engaged. And as you can see from the photographs, the themes varied. We had Ladies' Races Day, the 60s theme, etc. And we had a regular attendance. So that ran weekly, and it brought all the members and carers and volunteers from across the county together in one group setting. We also ran carers support sessions online. So the carers that were in the meeting centres on a local basis joined each other on local support sessions during that period, one of which is still ongoing now at the request of the carers. So again, looking at the ethos of the meeting centre during that period, another thing that we did was we're looking at the activities, and we had a knit and natter group. This knit and natter group met online monthly, and they produced, as you can see from the photographs, a lot of different items. This knit and natter group still goes strong, and they're still meeting on a monthly basis. Since we've gone back into our physical meeting centres, we no longer send the patterns and the wool that's required for them to make particular items, but they make items that they're working on themselves and join together socially. And the Newtown Knit and Natter group is a very big supporter of Dementia Matters in Paris and the Newtown Meeting Centre, raising funds and making donations to us, so they're great support. So we also offered online exercises. So for the physical side of the meeting centres, we had one volunteer who created a YouTube channel to offer our members, carers and volunteers seated exercise videos that they could access at any time. And we also linked up with a dance company to offer online seated sessions, which were called Wiggle with a Giggle. And those participants that joined really enjoyed themselves. And the dance company have recently produced a video based on their experiences of their work with Dementia Matters in Paris. So it's a blog, which you can find online. And they are still now coming into our meeting centres in the physical locations, and the members and carers continue to enjoy their sessions. We also, during that time, offered other activities where we offer people the opportunity to do various things during the winter period, which we called our winter games: embroidery, painting, jigsaws, etc. And that again brought people together where they were able to share what they were doing online. Winter Games also was exhibited at our Summer Games event when we were all able to get together in person. So this was the first occasion that all of our members and carers and volunteers from across the meeting centres, of which there were 4 at that period, were able to get together. And the idea came from a member, this lady here in this photograph, who asked when she could get to meet all the people she'd been seeing online during the pandemic. Summer Games was held back in last September. So going back to COVID times, we then secured funding to reopen our meeting centres in October 2021. This funding was secured from a social value fund, and it had to have a different element. So looking at how we've been connecting with our members, carers and volunteers over that period of time during the pandemic and our physical meeting centres, we joined the two together and launched Powys Hybrid Meeting Centres. That was enabling people who were still at home, who didn't want to mix with groups, to link in from home and join in the activities amongst the meeting centres. So this was supported by the Social Value Fund through the Rural Partnership Board, and also through Digital Communities Wales, who provide training, support and equipment. So we're able to loan equipment to people who are at home, equipment that enables them to log on not only to our virtual meeting centre or join in the hybrid meeting centres and other activities, but also to connect with their family and friends. We have equipment that has built-in internet. Living in Powys, rural mid Wales, a lot of people don't have the internet. So being able to overcome that barrier has been key as well. So moving on now, we have our hybrid meeting centres in physical locations where people can join in from across the county. And then in March 2022, we opened our 5th meeting centre in Welshpool. This was slightly delayed as we were due to open in January of 22, but unfortunately with the spike of COVID at that time, we held back until mid-March. That is now one of our highest attendance numbers in terms of members and carers attending. It's a very popular meeting centre. That too is supported by a local dementia-friendly group, Dementia-Friendly Welshpool. Very similar to Dementia-Friendly Newtown, they cover the costs of the venue hire, and they support us in terms of promotion and activities in the town. So that leaves us with 5 meeting centres: Newtown, Welshpool, Uchtregunlais, Brecon and Llandrindod Wells, covering the 5 major towns of Powys, where our members and carers are now happy to join in together. And as you can see from the photographs, friendships are formed, fun is had, various activities, people joining in together, relaxation sessions. And we've recently had a lot of art sessions ongoing, and some of the artwork that you can see was our members and carers getting used to how watercolour paint works together. And they went on to create paintings that were exhibited at the Senate last week during Dementia Action Week. That is being led by Frances Isaacs, who is in the audience today, who is currently delivering several groups painting with Franny sessions to people in Crickhowell, which again is very south in Powys. She's having great success with that. So the first one of those sessions was held in Brecon Meeting Centre. So Dementia Matters in Powys, the 5 meeting centres across the rural county. I'd like to leave the presentation with a little bit of our summer games and a little bit of Wales for you. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation. I'm sorry about the blip in the middle.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Deborah. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions in the moment. I have to say, I was at the Summer Games. It was incredibly enjoyable. And I didn't imagine I spend so much time and energy thinking about the weight of a goat. We got some sack. There was a sack that we were picking up sacks. And do you think this is the same weight as the goat? Very, very interested. So I hope you're going to have that one again. It's a skill I didn't know that I'd ever gain.
You weren't the only one who was struggling to guess the weight of the goat. The Summer Games was very much based on a summer fete, or old-fashioned sort of theme. And this year, I'm really pleased to announce we've just secured funding to enable us to have a similar event. And this year it's Jubilee Games. So the funding is very much in line with the Jubilee. So we'll have very similar games. We're not sure how we can make Tino the goat fit into a royal theme. We might have to dress him up as a corgi.
He's quite big though, because I can't remember, was he 17 kilos?
7 stone, I believe.
Oh, 7 stone. No wonder I didn't win that game. Yes, he was 7 stone, wasn't he?
Tino was recently the proud father of smaller goats, so we may have a mini Tino to act as a corgi. But our Jubilee Games will be held towards the end of the summer, date yet to be confirmed. Everybody is welcome to attend. Last year, as Shirley said, Shirley attended with people from Dementia Matters here, and they went away with first prize trophy of visiting teams. So we're keen to retain that and get it back in Powys.
No, we've been in training, I have to say. So I've got a question really. You've got meeting centres in the 5 major towns of Powys, but do you see that could be a need for satellites? So you mentioned Crickhowell and that. So would you be branching out with satellites as well as the hybrid approach?
That's a really good question, Shirley, because there's demand in other areas that we're aware of. The smaller towns, such as you mentioned, Crickhowell, radar in the mid, maybe smaller towns in the north, Machynlleth, Llanidloes. There's a lot of smaller towns that I think maybe dementia cafe type approach might work in those smaller towns, encouraging them to come into the meeting centres. Financially, it would probably be quite difficult to maintain and sustain more than the meeting centres that we currently have, unless, of course, we could secure the funding.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Kington as a border town as well with that, so that's a really good point. There's a question in the chat pane from Caroline Hutton. Do you have on-site storage at each centre, or do you have to bring it all in and then out?
Hi, Caroline, that's a really good question. We're often quite envious of the meeting centres that have their own buildings, that don't have to worry about taking equipment back and forth. That is quite a chore at times, particularly if you're taking a lot of equipment in for a particular activity. So we have our 4 development officers who have responsibility for making sure they've got the right equipment and resources for the day. Some of our meeting centres have storage, but it's always limited. Out of our 5 meeting centres, 2 offer us storage, but it is limited space in a cupboard. That is the downside of not having our own buildings. And it's not just being able to keep your equipment and make the logistics easier when you have your own building. It's being able to put your own stamp on it. I visited Leominster Meeting Centre, and to see there's a poem that's shared amongst us called The Magic, and the members and carers of Leominster Meeting Centre created a huge wall hanging of the magic, and with forget-me-nots that they crafted themselves, and it really did put their stamp on that meeting centre. Kirriemuir in Scotland have recently secured their own building, and from the photographs they've really been able to put their own stamp on that as well. So of course, it comes with overheads and longer term challenges, but it certainly does have its advantages. So no, sorry, Caroline, to answer your question, some do, some don't.
Mm-hmm. I had a question about advertising, and I suppose it links as well to. And there's a couple of questions, so I'm sorry I didn't want to hog that. It's about the connection as well with the dementia-friendly communities and how you leverage that to attract people to the meeting centres, and the advertising, how that links together. Would you like to say something about that, Deborah? Then I'll come on to Graham and Ruth.
Thank you. Having a strong connection with the dementia-friendly group, I think, is key. It's crucial to success. Dementia Matters in Powys were formed because of this very strong link with Brecon area dementia-friendly community, who were the first dementia-friendly community in Wales, very proactive group. At that time, there were 13 very active members of that group who, after successfully embedding in Brecon, were the ones to suggest that there should be a county-wide approach, and hence Dementia Matters in Powys was born. So that relationship is definitely key. More recently, our relationship with Newtown and Welshpool dementia-friendly groups has really helped to put us on the map in that part of the county with their local activities on the ground, sharing the word about Dementia Matters in Powys and the dementia meeting centres has undoubtedly contributed towards the success. Our high numbers of attendance are in Newtown and Welshpool, where those dementia-friendly groups are very active. So I'd say it definitely contributes highly. Advertising, we do a lot on social media because it's free, but we appreciate that doesn't always target the audience that we need to target. So again, going back to those local groups, having their support, tapping into their networks where they share details about us is priceless. We can't afford to be running paid campaigns, so anything that works, and working with local networks, local organisations, piggybacking on events, etc., is again quite a successful approach.
Okay, thank you. Graham.
You've kind of answered a little bit of what I was going to ask, just in your answers there. But we have a few projects in Scotland that are looking at both kind of hub and satellite models, and also a kind of a mobile model very similar to what you're doing now. I was just wondering if you had any advice for them on how to get going and things to look out for.
I think certainly when trying to spread that meeting centre across a rural area, Scotland would probably be similar to ourselves. Big barrier was the internet connection. And we found a device that has built-in roaming internet, and we couldn't recommend it highly enough. It works in the thick stone building houses on the top of hills in remote locations where other internet fails. So being able to provide the equipment and the support to enable those people that want to join in to overcome those barriers, I think is crucial. Working with local groups to promote and sell your services to raise awareness of what you're delivering also goes hand in hand, I believe, with that successful spread approach, tapping into those local organisations, the dementia-friendly groups and any active groups. And in Scotland, in your area, you have a very tapped in dementia approach, community approach. So I'm sure you'll be able to tap into that network, and it's having that community support and the right equipment. Thank you for that, Graham.
Thank you. Ruth.
Thanks, Shirley. Thanks for that, Deborah. It was really interesting. I know a little bit about the history, and we've done bits of work together over the years, and some of your carers were involved in contributing to the brochure that we hope is going to be published soon. Perhaps Shirley can say a bit about that later, as well as carers from Scotland as well, of course. So that's great. We're coming at it from a different place, obviously, because Liverpool is a big city, but in some ways there are some similarities. So it's a very, like many big cities, it's parochial. So people who live in the north of Liverpool don't go to the south of Liverpool. Centre is a hub. People go in and out of the centre. So what we're looking at, we've got going again after 2 years being dormant, really, because of COVID. We've appointed another project manager. She's very keen. She's done loads of work, and I'm going to put her in touch with you if she's not already been in touch, to just to bounce ideas around, because we're looking at a sort of mobile model, because we won't have the revenue. Well, 2 reasons. One, we won't have enough revenue to commit to a building right from the beginning, but also it means we can try out different venues on different days of the week, see what works, see which are popular, and then build it up from there. So there's some crossover with your approach, and you've got to go with what works, haven't you, in your locality and with your community. I'm the vice chair of the Liverpool Dementia Action Alliance as well, so we've got good links in that way as well, to different organisations. So thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. I think that's a really good point. It's having the approach that works for the local area, isn't it? Because meeting centres are local. Even though we're UK-wide structure and we have that format, the local element within a meeting centre is at the heart. I'd say it's the heartbeat of the meeting centres, the local element. So the mobile approach is a really interesting one, and one that would work in towns and rural areas. A mobile meeting centre bus. Good luck, Ruth. I hope it all works out well in Liverpool, and we're happy to help wherever we can.
Yeah, it does. So Ruth, you mentioned the carers handbook. I think that you've been developing with Dementia Matters in Powys and carers there. So that's with a comms team at the moment. So we hope for that to be published during June with a revised guidebook and slightly updated essential features. And Graham's and his team are working on a member's handbook as well. So I'm sure it's taken a bit of a while to get it moving, but it is moving. That's for sure. There was, Thomas, you had a question. Perhaps it's been answered.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I think it has. I think I was going to ask something very similar to what you asked about. I was just very interested in the DFCs, like the town-based DFCs,
Yeah.
kind of like working in partnership. I think that's a really interesting model. The only thing I was going to ask really was just, do you think that's something that you might do more of in the future? You might, I suppose you've got the towns covered now, but I just think that's fascinating to see how that's worked.
We're so lucky to have the support of the local dementia-friendly groups, and definitely would like to do more of that. We haven't got all the towns covered. Across Powys, there's not currently 9 dementia-friendly groups in different towns. There's room for more. And I have a dream that Powys could be the first dementia-friendly county. So I don't know quite how far we'd have to go to make that happen, but so to have all the towns, dementia-friendly communities, all the schools and businesses, etc.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, did Welshpool, were they like Newtown? Did they approach you and say, we want to start one? That's really interesting that the last 2 have had the local town come along and say, we want this.
Very much.
Really
and Welshpool, dementia-friendly Welshpool, were affected, as many others, by COVID. So they had a lot of community activities prior to COVID that they weren't able to do, but they were still attracting donations. So they approached us saying, we sat on a little bit of money, we could afford to pay for your venue. Can you do the rest, as it were? And it's a very successful partnership.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay. Well, yeah.
Thank you.
Also, sorry, Shelley, I forgot to mention that we're involved with the Get Real with Meeting Centres project that Thomas and Faith are running, and that's looking at the sustainability of meeting centres. Thomas and Faith have come along to meeting centres. You've been in Newtown meeting.
I was Newtown last. I did want to go to Welshpool as well. I haven't as yet, but that's something that is still on my list to kind of make a visit there. I think one thing I was thinking is that I might even say, I mean, some of the stuff in this webinar, I know it's being recorded, we could possibly use towards Get Real as well. So that's
great. No, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Thomas. And we're also involved in the UK National Consortium of Meeting Centres. We had our first meeting of the new setup yesterday with Shirley and others, and Graham from Kirriemuir, members and carers as well. So that's a small group looking at meeting centres going on beyond February 2023, when current funding ends. So
how often do you say that, when current funding ends?
It's a bit of a catchphrase, isn't it?
It slips in at the end of a sentence, doesn't it? And we've got a couple of questions in the chat pane. So Linda's saying, what are the devices you use? If you can be specific, some of our clients might be able to afford to buy them, others we could try to seek funding for.
Absolutely, Linda, thank you for that. The device with the built-in roaming internet is called a Grand Pad. So a little bit like Granddad, but Grand Pad. And it's available, not that I'm plugging, we don't get commission, through one company in the UK called Silver Tech. Silver, TECH. You can purchase the device on 2 options. You can purchase it on a monthly basis or a 12-month basis. You don't actually purchase the device, you purchase the service. If you sign up for 12 months, it's a little bit cheaper, about £600 a year. If after 2 or 3 months you don't want it, you send it back and you get a refund of all the unused months, a little bit like your road tax. It not only is a super easy to use, you don't have to shut it down and power off processes. You literally open the lid and it's good to go. It's personalized, and it also provides 24-hour support at the touch of a button. I couldn't recommend it enough. So we got one device on loan to loan out, and then we bought one device to loan out.
Can I just ask, while you're answering my question, and thank you for that, that's really helpful. Are these devices portable?
Yes, incredibly so. They're a little bit small, larger than a mobile, smaller than a tablet. very portable. If they're dropped, broken, lost in a cafe, grandpad, replace them. So honestly, I couldn't recommend them enough.
No, so that's a good question and useful information, and it's sometimes equipment. Well, it's the least difficult thing to fund. If you've got something specific like that, people are keen to fund equipment. Caroline's asking, how many staff are employed? How many volunteers do you have?
Great, thanks, Caroline. We currently have 4 members of field staff. That's our dementia community development officers. So they cover the meeting centres, the support to our members and carers, other support, etc., and myself as chief officer. So that's 5 staff in total. The development officers all work 30 hours each per week, and I work 37 hours. And our fantastic team of 21 volunteers and rising, soon to be 23. And 4 of those are trustees, one of which is with us today, Mark Michaels. And also Viv Evans has been a volunteer with Dementia Matters in Powys for a long time, before my day, Viv. And Viv has worked in our Landridnod and Newtown meeting centres and currently very active in the community of Newtown. So we're attracting more volunteers in our new centres and could always recruit more.
Francis has just flagged up that Painting with Franny is a Powys-wide project with government funding, and she contacted the Crickhowell Dementia Friendly Group, who put her in contact with the Volunteer Centre with other projects proposed, and hoping to recruit local artists and students to run the model as well. So
it's fantastic.
Yeah, really fantastic amount of things going on in Powys.
Yes, Francis, the Painting with Franny group started with support from the new North Wales and Powys Dementia Partnership. So they funded for Francis to deliver these sessions across Powys, as Francis said, started with the kick-off session in the meeting centre, and then other centres have been in Crickhowell Volunteer Bureau, and they're an amazing local volunteer bureau, and they really have their finger on the dementia pulse. Francis, would you like to tell us a little bit how you got on last Wednesday? Francis visited the Zenith, had an exhibition there.
I did. I was taken down by Alzheimer's Society to mark their timely diagnosis campaign for Dementia Awareness Week. And we were in one of those little committee type rooms where the AMs, they just come between meetings. Anyway, they piled in. We saw, I think, a third of the Senedd members in that hour or so, and they were all sort of chatting away with me. The health minister sent somebody down to say she couldn't come and apologise, and has suggested that she will come on a private visit to see the project, which is, you know, quite an exciting prospect. And the art that I took down was that from my online group and from the work done at both Crickhowell and DMIP. And I think everyone understood the importance of it. People are lost in the moment. They have no idea they're able to do it. They're all told at school they can't. Suddenly they discover with the right kind of instruction that they can. And the peace that they get from it is just, well, it's hard to measure, but it's very thrilling to be involved in it.
And this first session in Crickhowell is the first session. Francis will then be moving on across the county with plans to go right north up to the tip of Oswestry. So
yeah.
Watch this space. Painting with Franny is going to
develop. I dare say when it's no longer me, they'll change the name to something more sensible.
Oh, I don't know, Francis. It'll always be Painting with Franny. So Francis was also on ITV Wales News last week talking about her painting experiences. And you've also been running for at least 2 years an online painting course with DEEP, the
Yes.
Dementia Engagement Empowerment Programme Group, which has been incredibly successful as well, isn't it?
Yes, I'm astonished at them. I mean, these are all people living with a variety of different dementias. Underneath each piece of artwork that I took was their diagnosis, just to highlight to people the very many different types.
Yeah,
And I think, you know, people were very surprised and a little bit more aware, you know.
very much.
The MIP does a lot of intergenerational stuff, which I think has huge value, so that next generations will understand that when grandma or grandpa get diagnosed, that it isn't as terrible as you think it's going to be. I mean, I remember being at various sessions. I've done an art with one of the Mount Street groups and the DMIP people. This was before COVID. We did one around Poppy Day. Brecon being a military town, you know, it's very, very relevant to many of the children whose parents serve, all in some terrible places, of course. And when it came to sort of poppy making and painting of poppies, they would have reminiscences from some of the older members who would know that a parent of theirs had gone, or they perhaps had been in the army somewhere, you know, later on after the war, perhaps in Korea or the Falklands, particularly around this way. And it was all highly relevant. And one little boy stopped work and the teacher came up behind him and said, you know, why aren't you carrying on? And he pointed to his elderly partner and said, I'm waiting for him to catch up.
Oh,
You know, there were some sweet moments. And then at the end, the teacher said, is there anything any of you would like to say? And one kid blurted out, they're nothing like as horrid as I thought they would be. You know, the expectation. Oh, it's heartwarming. And I think that is a massively important thing that DMIP do.
oh, thank you, Frances. That's lovely to hear from you. I know when I've been in the meeting centres, when the parties of school children have attended, it is incredibly heartwarming. The
It is.
bonding that takes place between the pupils and the members' carers. I can remember one occasion, 2 teachers looking on to a young boy with an older woman, and they were working on some craft sessions at the time. And the teachers were looking amazed, and they said to me, we can't believe the change in this boy's behaviour. He is the most difficult boy to manage within the school, but he's the most angelic when he comes here.
Yes.
So it just, that connection just brings about a different bond, doesn't it? And it's so good to see.
I'll tell you what does worry me though, Deborah, on a slightly different subject and specific to DMIP, is the fact that you have to spend so much time worrying about funding. I don't know enough to know why, but I cannot understand why the Health Board doesn't pick up and run these ready-made centres across Paris. There they are, ready to go. And they should be working with you a lot more closely, because they have a very high value for people in towns.
Absolutely, you know, the Health Board and the local authority. There are some areas across the UK, Worcester have secured funding to operate, was it 9 meeting centres for 3 years, Shirley, from Worcester?
Well, it's part funding. It's £20,000 a year for the 3 years. But yes, I mean, that is a really good strategic approach as well.
Yeah.
To get them going. I'm hoping. I've been talking to Herefordshire Council for more than 3 years about the possibility there, because we have a joint dementia strategy, Herefordshire and Worcestershire. So you hope that it could be replicated, but it's not there yet.
No.
And with the new dementia care standards, we're across the 4 nations of the UK Meeting Centre Support Programme. We're all working to different dementia care standards, dementia action plans. So that said, the meeting centres are ticking all the boxes, regardless of which nation we're operating in. And local authorities are looking at services that can be replicated across the nation, particularly, you know, in Wales at the moment, the newest dementia care standard is crying out at the moment for services that can be delivered across the nation. But there's also, on the flip side of that, there's a brick wall in some cases to continued funding for projects that are ongoing. A lot of funders don't want to fund things that have been up and running. They want to fund something new, hence why we looked at the hybrid meeting centre when we needed to reopen after COVID. So that is a frustrating side of it at times as well.
It's ridiculous because these things need to be run, and if they can't be run by the health service, they need the money to run them. They're a crucial service to people, and I don't mean as a dumping ground, you know, to ditch off your person who's living with dementia to give the other partner a few hours off. I know it does help sometimes, but the idea of the meeting centre, the ethos behind it, as I understood, was to help people at an early stage to understand their diagnosis. A great deal of work is being done to produce a syllabus with Improvement Cymru to have a course delivered by people with dementia for people who have just had their diagnosis, to show them that you can live a good life in spite of it. It's just a matter of learning how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Because we've all, you know, those of us who get dementia have got forever ahead. I remember being told I should already be dead now, according to the statistics. I'm not planning it either, but I'm at what they call late stages. So, you know, I feel I've got a long way to go. Meanwhile, what can I say?
And looking at what you're currently doing, Frances, you know, with your art therapy, and then the amount of people that you're supporting with that. Yeah.
Can I just add to that? Frances, you are inspirational. Hi. I've met you a few times at PAVO meetings, AGMs, and you really are inspirational. And DMIP is so close to my heart because as a volunteer, I joined the DMIP in Llandrindod, originally because I'd cared, if you can call it care, for my mum for 5 years, totally on my own as her sole carer. I'd come from the Channel Islands, so I knew nothing about what was available in South Wales. I was totally on my own, no family, and for 5 years I virtually lived like a hermit, other than seeing my mother's GP. And when I moved to Llandrindod, Wales, after my mum died, and I heard that they were setting up this meeting centre, I thought, well, I know it's a bit late now, but I'm going to volunteer just to learn what perhaps I should have been doing for 5 years. And the whole thing just amazed me. The support that is there, not just for the members, but for the carers behind the scene as well, not just in the meeting centre, but there are so many professional bodies that support DMIP for what they are doing. And because the National Health Service is so stretched and overworked and the waiting lists are forever, DMIP can often get the answers that the carers need long before they would if they approach the NHS direct. And that to me would have been invaluable when I was caring for my mum. So I think DMIP is an essential. It's an essential in the community. It isn't just something, oh, aren't we lucky to have it? We need to have a DMIP in every town, everywhere.
Yes.
I mean, where were they in South Wales? You know, why didn't the GP say to me, there's an organisation called DMIC that you can go to, and they'll give you all the information. So they're vital, and they should be funded. You know, they really should be funded because they take the strain off the NHS ultimately. So.
Thank you, Frances. Sorry, thank you, Frances and Viv. That was an incredible statement and totally unsolicited, everybody. I hadn't asked Francis or Viv to say those words, so that's incredibly genuine, and thank you very much. It's really good to hear that, Viv. Thank you.
I said it before, I had to write an article for Pavo one year about why I chose to be a volunteer. And what I just said was virtually what I put in the article. So
that's very heartfelt. Thank you, Viv. And without volunteers like Viv and input from members like Fran, DMIP wouldn't be what it is. So we need our volunteers and our members, and we like to feel that we can sit back and deliver and make things happen that our members, carers and volunteers want to happen. So we really do feel that we are people-led, and we hope that that shines through. And we do this because dementia does matter.
It does matter in Powys and everywhere as well.
Yeah.
But dementia matters in Powys. It's shining out of the screen. You could bottle it. It's just fantastic what you do, and everybody. Has anybody got any last questions for Deborah and Team Powys?
Our trustee Mark, one of our trustees, Mark, is here as well. If you have questions to trustee. Sorry, Mark.
Yes, the point I would make had just been made, really, that it's the insecurity around the funding that that hampers us in our development. And Deborah and the team have worked wonders in such an insecure environment.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. It's continuing to just respond, isn't it? I think we have to keep on rolling with what's presented to us, and COVID certainly tested that, and it made us jump into areas that maybe wouldn't have jumped into before. So we learn from our members and carers that they're having to experience things that they haven't experienced before. They're continually having to readjust. So we learn so much from the people that we support daily.
Absolutely. Well, it's nearly coming up to 1 o'clock, and I'd like to say thank you so much for you coming today and telling us all about Dementia Matters in Powys, and all the amazing work that you're doing. It's been absolutely marvellous, and to hear that. And thank you.
Shirley, Susan had got her hand up. I don't know if you noticed.
No, I can't see it.
I've just taken it down actually, because you were closing up. It's just a quick question. I'm the manager of the Memory Assessment Service, and we do have quite a big waiting list at the moment. Do you think that a meeting centre would be able to support people pre-diagnosis?
Definitely, and we do. And we work so closely with the memory assessment teams in North Powys and South Powys, and to the point where the memory assessment team not only come into the meeting centres so they can talk to our members and carers, they stay behind and help clear up. And in fact, if you look at our Facebook postings, you'll see some footage of the memory assessment North Powys team clearing up after our open session last week. So we have great links with them on our community stalls, such as the Newtown Dementia Friendly group. Last week we were joined by some memory assessment teams, and our dementia leads nurse in Powys is responsible for the dementia assessment memory teams and is involved in Dementia Friendly Newtown. So very active, very proactive.
That's really nice to hear. I do feel like we're letting our those people down because we're not doing anything specifically with them, and this just sounds like something that would be so useful, and you've just confirmed that it is. So I think I'm going to go cap in hand to my managers and say, here's 20,000, let's start something.
Oh, definitely, yes, definitely. Spread it across the UK. You may have seen recently the Association of Dementia Studies shared a map of the meeting centres and how it's spreading across the UK, and it's so good to see. But at the moment, we are the only ones in Wales. There's one close to opening in North Wales, but as it is at the moment, there's plenty of room. And Jennifer's saying that map's already out of date. I've given up saying how many meeting centres are open across the UK, because when we started we were 1 and 9,
Yeah.
and it was one of 11. Then it quickly went to 33. Now the last number I recall is 44. I'm sure it's hovering around 49. Is it now, Shirley?
It's 46 with your 5 and Scotland's 14, with some really close on the horizon there as well, and the rest are 27 in the UK. But we've got new meeting centres going to be opening, I'm sure, in Liverpool and in the West Midlands and in Hampshire, and absolutely loads of places. So hoping for 60 by the end of the
Brilliant.
of the weekend, I was going to say. I meant the year.
The support in Scotland, I'm sure Graham from Kirriemuir would agree, that the statutory support that Scotland are receiving, and you're very much embedded in Kirriemuir, aren't you, Graham, within the statutory delivery? And
yeah, we're getting significant support from our Health and Social Care Partnership now. East Lothian have given 3 years core funding to the meeting centre there, so it's not everywhere, but it's slowly starting to happen.
Yeah, once one area gets on board, you'd hope that other areas follow. Graham was recently updating the UK Meeting Centre group about developments in Scotland, and I was sitting on with great admiration and a little bit of jealousy.
Yeah, well, just a little bit. Anyway, thank you, Deborah, for your presentation, everybody's input, and for coming here today. Our next webinar is on June the 24th, and we're going to be hearing about the meetings, the Worcestershire meeting centres and their development. And we're also hear from a PhD student, Nathan Stevens, about social return on investment as well. So that's really interesting and really key and useful for funding, amongst other things as well. So thank you so much, and have a really good weekend. And thanks for coming. It's marvellous to see you.
Thank you all for listening. Francis said meeting centres are a great place to go to get peer support, basically. So pre-diagnosis, that post-diagnosis, come along. Thank you all very much for being here, and particularly to Powys people for coming to support. Bye.
Right.